Tonight we game! Episode 5. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite role playing games that I've never run. And this is the old TSR game Alternity. Alternity came out in the 90s, and it was supposed to be a generic role playing game that you could use to play basically any genre, but it actually that was it. It was sold that way after it came out. It's actually its first release was touted as a science fiction role playing game. It says it right here at the top. You can't really read it here because it's kind of blurry, but it's a science fiction role playing game. So when it came out, it was supposed to be a science fiction role playing game, but then it morphed into a generic role playing game that would, theoretically could be used for any genre. So I guess the correct term is multi-genre role playing game. So the game came out in the 90s, and this was during a time in my life where I wasn't doing much gaming. Actually wasn't doing any gaming. I was trying to build a career at work, got married, had a baby, so did the whole adulting thing for a good chunk of the 90s. I would say the lion's share of the 90s. So throughout that decade, I really didn't do much gaming. However, I still had an interest in gaming. Sadly, back then, the internet wasn't as much of a thing as it is today, so online gaming wasn't an option. So I really didn't have an outlet for my gaming interests other than just purchasing products. So I continued to purchase things that appealed to me, and this really stood out because, first of all, they're pretty books. It came from TSR, which was still in control of Dungeons and Dragons back then, and I was a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. And I was interested in science fiction role playing. I've never actually did science fiction role playing. The closest I got to it was our gaming group played a few sessions of Gamma World back in the late 90s. And so we had, a bit of science fiction in that, but it wasn't really hardcore science fiction. So when this came out, I picked them up and I was immediately intrigued by the gaming system. It was a D20 system. In other words, you rolled a D20 and you add modifiers to hit a target number, but the system was different enough from the core D&D system that it really intrigued me. So one of the innovations of this game was, instead of modifiers being a major aspect of the game, it had um, a dice scale system that would be used as a modifier um, for different scenarios or different complications that may come into the game or different benefits that are in the game. So it was a situational modifier system, and it really intrigued me because I really hadn't seen anything like that up to that point. And the scale that was used utilized all of the dice, which I'm a big dice fan. I love rolling dice. That's one of the aspects of role playing games that I really enjoy is the fact that it's not all in your head. There's a tactile aspect to the game, and that is rolling dice. And just the thought that something that you want to do may be impacted by the roll of a random roll of a die and the application of some modifiers, that combination just really works for my imagination and really works for how my brain works. So I really enjoy using dice, and the fact that this game utilized this system whereby it would utilize pretty much all of the dice that were in play at that time. In other words, the D4 all the way up to the D20 as bonuses and penalties really intrigued me. So the way that it works basically is that you start the game off with D20. The D20 is the die that is primarily rolled to determine success or failure. And then you would add a situational modifier dice or die to your roll based on whether you had a favorable situation or you had an unfavorable situation. So there's a scale that's in the book, and I could probably put it up on the screen, but I don't want to take the time to do that. So here's the book, and here's the scale, and you can see that the scale goes from plus D20, plus D12, plus D8, plus D6, plus D4, plus D, what is that, D3? No, D0. And then it goes to minus D4, minus D6, minus D8, minus D20, and minus D12, and then minus D20. Now, the weird thing about this that you'll notice is that the pluses are down here in the penalty section. The minuses are up here in the bonuses section. That's because this game, it was kind of backwards from how the D20 system works today. You wanted to roll low in Alternity. You didn't want to roll high. So you roll a D20 hoping to get a natural 1 rather than a natural 20, because the lower you rolled, the higher your chance of success. And so the situational die was added, or the situational die coincided with the D20 as a bonus if you subtract the number from the situational die. And as a penalty, if you add the situational die to the D20 roll. So you would take a D20, and let's say you had a one-step bonus to your roll. So a one-step bonus, according to this chart, would be a D4. So you would roll your D20 and you would roll a D4. And whatever number came up on the D4, that would be subtracted from the number that came up on the D20. And again, you were trying to get the lowest number possible to determine success. Conversely, if you had a situation that was difficult, and as a GM, you wanted to represent that as a penalty to your player's roll, then you would assign a penalty die to the D20 roll. So let's say your character, one of your players is trying to scale a wall that is very flat and featureless, making it very difficult. You would assign a penalty die to that D20 roll. So let's say we wanted to make this a very formidable challenge for this player. So a formidable on this chart would be a plus D12. So the player would roll a D20 trying to roll low, but they would also roll a D12 and they would add the number on the D12 to the number rolled on the D20. So that could be pretty bad if you rolled a 12. Even if you rolled a low number on your D20, let's say you rolled a 5, you add a 12 to a 5, that's 17, and chances are you're not going to make that roll. So it was an interesting mechanic, and I was really intrigued with how this would play out. So I went all in on Alternity. So I bought the player's handbook and I bought the Game Master's Guide right out the gate, right? And that's what's showing up on the screen there. And then, given that I wanted to learn more about science fiction role playing, I purchased the campaign setting that came with it, which was Star Drive. Now, back then, I was a big Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars, but I didn't have the Star Wars role playing game, and I'd never played the Star Wars role playing game, and for some reason, it really didn't appeal to me. I don't know why. I want to say that Star Wars to me it existed on film. I really wasn't interested in reading Star Wars books. I really wasn't interested in any other medium to get my Star Wars fix. It was all in the movies. So the Star Wars role playing game really didn't do anything for me. I was a Star Trek fan as well. I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so I really liked Star Trek The Next Generation. I don't know if there was a Star Trek RPG back then, but even if there was, I probably wouldn't have been too interested in it. I was more interested in Alternity from an all new and all different role playing experience. So I didn't really want to take an existing franchise and kind of try to squeeze it or fit it in, retrofit it into this new role playing game that I got. So I was intrigued when the Star Drive campaign setting came out. So I bought it and I read through it, and it was interesting because it was basically set in the future, the our reality in the future, and I forget how far in the future it is. I want to say it's like 500 years, but the and it could be further than 500 years, but it's far enough in the future that it is futuristic, but not so far in the future that everything is so impossible and magic like. So this is still grounded in science that we know of, that we're aware of and familiar with, but still fantastic enough that it qualifies as science fiction. So, you've got starships, you got faster than light technology, but it's grounded in theoretical science for today. So it utilizes a system, the Star Drive campaign utilizes a system called a starfall. And the starfall is basically a faster than light mechanic whereby a starship opens up a portal into an adjacent dimension and basically falls into that dimension for a period of time. And during that time frame, the starship travels to where it wants to eventually end up, and then it once that time frame ends, the star drive, which is the engine that opens up this portal, releases the starship from this pocket dimension, and then the starship has traveled a far greater distance than it would in real space. So this pocket dimension kind of is kind of like warp drive in that, or it's kind of more like in Star Wars where they go into hyperspace, but rather than traveling through hyperspace like they do in Star Wars, this actually um, you just kind of fall out of our real space, and then you fall back into our real space at the location that you're wanting to go to. And it doesn't matter how far you travel, the star drive always takes a prescribed amount of time to travel any distance. So, and I believe it's like 21 hours or 21 or 11, let's see, 11 hours or 11 days. I can't remember. But anyway, it is the star drive takes a certain amount of time to travel whatever distance is. So you want to go 5 light years, it doesn't matter. It still takes you that much time to go 5 light years versus, say, going 20 light years. It still takes you the same amount of time. So, and you can only go so far utilizing the star drive. So you have to make several jumps in order to get to a really distant location, which takes a really long. It adds up the amount of time it takes to get to that location. So I'm probably fucking this up really badly because I'm going by memory here. I really haven't read through this game in a long time, but that system was really intriguing to me, and I was interested in seeing what kind of game you could play in this setting. The other thing that intrigued me is that the setting relies on the fact that the human civilization continued more or less as we are today, and it progresses to the point where governments no longer exist. Everything is run by corporations. And I don't think this is a new idea. I think other role playing games and other science fiction series have kind of taken this concept and run with it. But that's where this setting goes. It takes the idea that there are really no governments. The governments are corporations, mega corporations. And these mega corporations pretty much rule different parts of known space, and space that has been colonized by humanity. So Earth still exists and it's still like home base, but there are other worlds that have been colonized, and humanity has spread throughout not only the solar system, but also into other parts of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, the Fashion Light Drive is not powerful enough for humanity to have left the Milky Way galaxy. In fact, utilizing the star drive technology, it has only enabled humanity to um, colonize a percentage of the Milky Way galaxy. And it's a fairly small percentage, if I remember correctly. Because even though it's fashion like technology, it still takes a long time to go a good distance in this utilizing this technology. I'm trying to find the map that has the star map that has the stellar nation. So this is the star map that has the stellar nations, and so they're the nations that are um, that exist are things like the Orion League, the Orion League, the Starmech Collective, the Thulden Empire, Riggamore Star Consortium, Borealis Republic. So there's a bunch of them. Void Corp is a big one. Concord Prime, and right in the middle of this map is the Sol system, which is the where Earth is located. And so um, this is basically there's actually a better map. I wonder if it's in this book or if it's in a different book, but the um, the game can be played in many different ways. You can be part, you could be part of one of these mega corporations that is trying to expand its territory or trying to infringe on another corporation's territory. There's lots of ways you can play this game, but the core setting basically assumes that you're an explorer and you are trying to push the boundaries of the human frontier outward. And where we are trying to go is to this place called the Verge, which is way on the outskirts of the frontier that has been settled. And so the Verge is kind of like this new frontier, like the Wild Wild West. And that's where the core setting, wants you to set up your campaign. Of course, you can set it up anywhere, any way you like, and the books allow for that. But the stuff that came out afterwards kind of assume that you're taking this idea of being explorers and running with it. So there's information about the Verge that you can purchase, which I did, and you can kind of go with it. Now, there are alien civilizations that have been discovered. There are aliens that you can play in this setting as well. You can play as a gray alien, and I believe they are called the Frawl, if I remember correctly. You can also play as different aliens, um, and I think there's a handful of aliens altogether. But at any rate, those are all actually in the player's handbook. You can start, the player's handbook has all of the aliens that you can play listed here. You've got the Frawl, you've got Macallus, which are kind of like cyborgs. You've got the Sashaeans, which are winged aliens. Then you've got the Tissa, which are these weird little, I'm not really sure how to describe them, reptilian aliens, I guess, with big heads. Then you've got the Weren, which are these big, husky, Wookiee-looking guys with tusks. And I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it. So anyway, it's an interesting setting, and like I said, I purchased just a ton of supplements that came out with the game. Let me see here. Picking out some of the more interesting ones. So there was an adventure, Red Star Eyes, that came out, and this adventure introduced a new alien species that was actually malevolent, called what people are calling the humans are calling the Clicks, and they're these bug-like aliens that are like upside down. Their heads are at the bottom, and they got these spider-like legs. Um, so these Clicks are discovered in this adventure, or they're featured in this adventure, I should say. But they are a threat to that are it's an emerging threat, I should say. I bought this supplement Starships, which gives you a variety of different starships based on the tech level that you want to play. And I should probably mention tech level. So the core game allows for you to play in a variety of different technology levels. It starts off, well, I think it goes from modern day play all the way up to like a Star Wars level of play. Um, and I forget exactly what the tech levels are. And it'll probably take me a few minutes to find it. So I'm not going to bother with it at this point. But there are different tech levels, and depending on the tech level, that determines what type of technology is available, including the faction and light drives that are available, the type of weaponry that might be available, and that sort of thing. So the Star Drive campaign is kind of like in the next to the last tier. I think the last tier is like Star Wars level, where you've colonized the galaxy and you're starting to go extra galactic. Um, Star Drive is you're still trying to explore the galaxy that your home planet is in. So anyway, this Starship book or supplement has different types of spaceships and different types of faster than light drive technology described in here so that you can customize your game. And then there's an arms and equipment guide. Got two of them, don't know why. Arms and equipment guide, which has different technology level weapons. Then you've got an alien compendium. So, of course, if you're playing a role playing game, you need opponents. So this has different opponents for different planets that you may be exploring. And then you've got the Star Compendium, which has different star systems described. Now, the core campaign book, Star Drive, already has a bunch of star systems described. This basically expands on that and gives you more star systems to play with. Alien Compendium 2, I purchased that. Then I picked up uh, Planet of Darkness, which kind of zooms in on it's kind of like a campaign setting slash adventure. So that was a thing I got. Threats from Beyond, more monsters and scenarios that you can throw at your players. Outbound, which is an explorer's guidebook. Again, more scenarios and monsters you can throw at your players. And then the last War Hulk, which is again another campaign setting slash adventure set on a what's called a War Hulk, which is if you know anything about 40K, you got a Space Hulk, which is a drifting spaceship that's been kind of infested with aliens and exposed to the warp. So there's evil shit in it. This is kind of the same premise as that, and it's about it, I think. So, like I said, I bought a lot of shit for this game. Never played it. Now, Alternity actually expanded into things beyond science fiction. So it went into, and I don't know the order that it went into these different games, but it did go into different genres. So I mentioned Gamma World earlier. Gamma World campaign setting was released. And so you could play the Gamma World utilizing the Alternity game system. So that was something I picked up and never played. And then this was one of my favorite campaign settings that I never got to play, Dark Matter. So back in the 90s, the X-Files was a big thing, right? And so this capitalized on conspiracy theory role playing. And Dark Matter kind of took the whole concept of the X Files and similar things that were out at the time and expanded upon it to build a really cool campaign setting. Um, so this campaign setting, you play the part of an investigator that works for a place called the Hoffman Institute that investigates paranormal and supernatural reports from around the world. And as an investigator, you would play the part of Mulder and Scully and that sort of thing, and you go out and investigate these things. And of course, you're not FBI, so you don't have the authority to arrest people or anything like that. But actually, that's more that being an FBI agent is kind of confining if you think about it, because you have to follow the law. Whereas as an investigator in the Hoffman Institute, you don't necessarily you can kind of bend the law or break the law as needed as long as you're not caught. And so this book allows you to play an investigator for the Hoffman Institute, investigating different supernatural things. And it's really cool because it's got all kinds of references in here and information pertaining to all kinds of real world mythology around supernatural things. And it's got lots of cryptid cryptozoology in here, alien mythology in here, all kinds of historical artifacts from the Mayan civilization. It's got an alternative history outline in here going from, oh, shoot, all the way back from 20 million BC up to modern times. And it includes different things that happen to civilization and how that these different supernatural things that happen to civilization, how that influenced the development of civilization. Um, and it goes into World War II quite a bit. Talks about the New World Order and the Illuminati. All this shit that fascinates the hell out of me. This is one of my interests. It's got different modern day secret societies in here, including the Illuminati, that can play, the bad guys in your game. And this is a really, really superb campaign setting. And again, never got to play in it, and or never got to run it. And so it's sad because it's a really just evocative campaign setting that I think would be really fun. Now, you could say that, well, Call of Cthulhu existed at this time. Call of Cthulhu actually predated Dark Matter, and this is a pale imitation of Call of Cthulhu. And I would say, no, not really. Call of Cthulhu is its own mythology. It takes the H.P. Lovecraft universe and plays in that sandbox. Now, you could say that it tries to bring the Call of Cthulhu mythology into modern times with the Delta Green um, supplements and campaign setting, and that may be the case. I never really got into Delta Green, but I would argue that Dark Matter is its own game, separate from Call of Cthulhu, and it introduces modern day mythological things from pop culture that Call of Cthulhu really doesn't have. And so, if you're a big fan of Ancient Aliens, for example, the TV show Ancient Aliens, it tries to say that everything in human history was influenced by extraterrestrials. This is your game. If you're into Bigfoot and all the Bigfoot hunting shows that are on TV, this is your game. If you love the X Files or the show Supernatural, this is your game. So, or your campaign setting, I should say. And of course, the game engine that was utilized in this was the Alternity game engine. Um, So let me see. I think that was about it. Now, Alternity just kind of ran its course in the 90s and early 2000s before TSR was bought out by Wizards of the Coast. And so when that happened, Wizards of the Coast kind of took over D&D, and you had third edition D&D come out, right? So third edition D&D was huge at the time, and so they wanted to capitalize on that. So eventually we got a version of Alternity that used the D20 system that third edition D&D created. And so Wizard of the Coast released D20 Modern. So D20 Modern was actually more of a modern role-playing game that kind of wanted, or it kind of attempted to set up role playing in today's world. So if you wanted to play an espionage game, or if you wanted to play, a gangbanger game, or if you wanted to play, games in the modern world, Fast and Furious would be a good example of a D20 modern game that you could play. Fantastic, but still grounded in reality. This was the core system that Wizard of the Coast introduced. And from this, they very quickly expanded into other genres. So from this, you got D20 Future, which was their way of morphing what was introduced in Alternity and bring it into the D20 Modern system. Now, unfortunately, this was kind of a generic futuristic book. It wasn't really a campaign setting, although it had the Star Drive campaign setting in here. It just glossed over it. It didn't have its own campaign setting book. It just had a chapter on the different campaigns that you can run using D20 Future. They released other campaign settings for D20 Modern, and I picked up a couple. One was D20 Apocalypse. This was a soft cover supplement that you could run that was kind of glossed upon in this book, but they actually gave it its own treatment in the soft cover. Um, so they did that for a few things, but for the most part, D20 Modern really didn't push the system very far. It wasn't greatly supported by Wizards of the Coast. There was another campaign setting that did come out shortly after the D20 Modern book, which was Urban Arcana. I did get to run one game in Urban Arcana for D20 Modern using a system, and that was a game that it wasn't really Urban Arcana, although I stole a lot of the stuff from here. My game that I ran was more fueled by the Dresden Files books, which I had started reading right around the time that this game came out. And so I wanted to kind of emulate the Dresden Files book series in a role playing game. And so I used a lot of the stuff from Roll20, or sorry, D20 Modern and D20 Modern Urban Arcana to run that game. More or less successful, but it didn't go very far. So anyway, that's what became of Alternity. Alternity basically evolved, or you could say devolved, into D20 Modern. And then D20 Modern was just kind of dropped. Some third party people picked up on it and kind of tried to run with it. But for the most part, it really just kind of died a quiet death. And again, these are some games from back in the day that I really, really, really loved reading and wanted to run, just never got a chance to do so. So that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of other stuff that I got for Alternity that I could show you. In fact, let me just throw them up here just to show you how deep my rabbit hole went. Dark Matter had an arms and equipment supplement that I picked up. Beyond Science, a guide to FX. This was a supplementary material or source book that came out. Mind Walking, this was a psionics supplement that came out. So psionics was already part of the game, but this kind of expanded on it. Dataware, so the Matrix had come out and was a thing, a really big thing, and so this capitalized on that. Also, you also had Shadowrun, which was actually predated this game, but for this tried to kind of latch onto the whole Shadowrun Matrix genre, cyberpunk, I guess is what it's called. Here's another Star Drive supplement, the Lighthouse, which is a base of operations. Um, Here's another adventure. Here's another adventure. Campaign kit that had a soft cover GM screen. Here's a GM screen for D20 Modern that I got. And for Dark Matter, I actually had an adventure. This was, I think, the only adventure that was produced as a standalone or as a separate adventure. There was an adventure in the core rulebook or in the core campaign setting book, but this was the only other adventure that I'm aware of for Dark Matter that was produced. Bruce Cordell wrote it, actually. And this adventure, I believe, has to do with the Mothman. Again, another cryptid, real-time mythology type of creature that fascinates the hell out of me, and it's featured in this book. Okay, so that exhaust. Well, I got some D20, more D20 modern stuff. Menace Manual was produced. Dark Matter, I forgot. Dark Matter morphed into D20 modern. I already showed you that. And I already showed you that. Critical locations. These were some modern locations that you could throw into your game. They had some maps produced. One other thing I want to mention real quick, and that is in today's environment, of course, we have 5th edition D&D. And so a modern version of 5th edition was produced. And I found it in a local gaming store. And this is called Amazing Adventures 5e. And it is produced by Troll Lord Games. And I forget what Troll Lord Games produces. It produces a line of adventures, I think, and some other popular things. I want to say Castles and Crusades is a Troll Lord game thing, but I'm not sure. But at any rate, Amazing Adventures 5e is a 5e take on D20 Modern. So it kind of takes the 5e system and makes it a modern system, but it's got it's got different genres in here as well. So you could play a spellcaster. It's got spells. Basically, it takes the 5e spells and kind of modernizes them in here. So this book actually could be used to run a Dark Matter campaign or a Star Drive campaign in the 5e rule set if you wanted to. But you would have to do a lot of work to to build the stuff that you want, because this is only one book. So there's not any support for it. So if you wanted to build a campaign setting, you would have to take the old campaign setting and just kind of morph it into 5e, which would be a lot of work on your part. So, but this does exist. So if I really wanted to, I could do a Dark Matter campaign using 5e. Not sure I want to, but at any rate, I still hold on to the hope that someday I can run Alternity. I'm not sure I would like it, simply because it doesn't read as good today as it did back then. There have been a lot of innovations in role-playing games and mechanics to help streamline play, and this game seems kind of clunky now that I kind of thumb through it. So I'm not sure that I would actually like running Alternity utilizing the game system. And I'm not sure I would enjoy running it using the Roll20 system. So, but I don't know, because I haven't done it. So I should just put my money where my mouth is and just sit down and talk my current group into experimenting with it and see how it goes. But I'm not there yet. So anyway, Roll or Alternity, if you ever run across it in a secondhand shop, it's a good read. So I don't know how to play this because I've never actually played it, but it's a good read. It's an interesting interesting system, and it's got really interesting campaign settings associated with it. So if you ever run across them, I would suggest, just perusing through them and see if you like it or not. One other quick mention that I should say, that I should bring up, and that is that Alternity was also modernized. There was a Kickstarter recently done by Sasquatch Game Studio to modernize Alternity. Um, However, the game, and I don't know if you can tell, but the Kickstarter didn't do great. It did okay, but it really only produces one book, and it produced some additional PDFs that were part of the Kickstarter, for with it. They had a couple of campaign settings, but as far as the only actual physical book, this was the only book. And as you can see, it's a smaller size book, and the page count isn't that great. So yeah, you've got the bare bones of a modern version of Alternity right here. But again, it would require a lot of work on my part in order to be able to, take the old material and transfer it into the current Alternity system. I may do it someday. I don't know. I don't know. We shall see. But anyway, that's it for today. That's it for our Tonight You Game episode. Hope you enjoyed this trip through memory lane. I enjoyed it because I haven't pulled out these books in quite a while, so it's really nice seeing them and dusting them off again. But at any rate, if you like my videos, please show your appreciation on YouTube by hitting the like button. If you want to leave a comment, you're more than welcome to do so. If you want to chat or want more information about any of these games, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to talk about it in the comments section of the video. So with that, I will let you all go. Happy gaming, everyone, and I will catch you in my next video.